This video is the third in a 4-part series that breaks down order of operations problems. By the end of this video, you should be able to answer the question, how do I evaluate a numerical expression using the order of operations? Again, we're going to review the order of operations. The very first thing you're going to look for are parentheses or grouping symbols, and those can be parentheses or brackets. Secondly, you're going to look for any exponents. All right, exponents mean you have a base, like the number 4, to an exponent, and that means you're going to multiply the number 4 times itself 5 times. All right, we're adding this to our order of operations problems today, and we'll talk about how to use your calculator to calculate these, because you probably will need your calculator a little bit more now that we're adding exponents to the examples. Following exponents, we have multiplication and division from left to right, and we know that means you have to do whatever comes first. And then lastly, we have addition and subtraction from left to right. Again, you're doing whatever comes first in the order that it appears. All right, I want to touch on exponents for a minute. All right, we talked about what 4 to the 5th means. Okay, it means you're going to take the number 4, multiply it times itself 5 times. All right. Now you can do that on your calculator, multiply 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, or there's a way we can do this a little bit more efficiently. So if we want to type in 4 to the 5th, it is my personal suggestion that anytime you type in an exponent, a base with an exponent, or a power on your calculator, that you use parentheses. So if we're going to type in 4 to the 5th, I would type in 4 in parentheses. Then you've got this caret button above your division button, this guy right here. That means to the power of. Now on the TI-84s, it actually moves the cursor up into the exponent position. On a TI-83, TI-86, it actually puts the caret in there. Okay, so on my calculator, I'm going to put to the 5th power. I'm going to hit enter, and it's going to give me 1024. All right, and you'll see if I multiply a 4 5 times, we'll get the same answer. Okay, so if you have a negative number, for example, a -7, and you want to square it, okay, squaring, you have a choice. There's this x squared button, which just brings up a square. All right, or you can do to the power of, and that'll bring your little caret up, and do 2 that way. All right, and you get 49. And if I double check just to show you -7 times -7, that does equal 49. If you were to type it in incorrectly, meaning without the parentheses, and you type in -7 to the 2nd power like that and hit enter, you're going to get the wrong answer. Okay? How you type it in has a great effect on what your answer is. So you need to make sure that you type it in correctly, which is why I always suggest if you're going to do a power, you put your base in parentheses and then your exponent to get the answer. Okay? All right, let's go back to order of operations. Here are some examples. As you can see, we have some exponents in here. We also have some multiplication and division. We also have some adding and subtracting. Just like the video in part 2, my suggestion is that you start at the top of your order of operations with parentheses or brackets. In this case, we don't have anything to do inside of parentheses or brackets. Okay? We have parentheses in this problem, but there's nothing to do inside of these parentheses. So we don't need to worry about that step yet in this lesson. But we do need to look for our exponents. And in number 1, we've got a 3 to the 2nd power. All right? you have to do the exponent first. You cannot multiply the 2 times 3 first because we're not in the multiplication and division step. So I'm going to write down 4 minus 2, and then I need to calculate 3 squared. Well, 3 squared means 3 times 3, and I know that's 9. So I'm going to put that in parentheses because if you look, there's no sign between the 2 and the 3 up here, so we assume that's a multiplication. All right, so we have 2 times 9, and then I'm going to write out my plus 7 at the end. Okay, I'm going to slide this down a little bit to give us some room. So now there are no exponents. Okay, I'm going to write this up here just so we have it as a reference. Parentheses first, then exponents. Then we have multiplication and division from left to right. Then we have add and subtract from left to right. So we've done our exponent step. Okay, we're starting here today. We did that step. Now we're on the multiply and divide from left to right. In this problem, there's only one part where there's multiplication, and that's the 2 times 9. So I'm going to write down my 4 and the minus. 2 times 9 is 18. And then I have my plus 7 waiting patiently at the end. All right, so now we've done all exponents, we've done all multiplication and division. Now we're in our very last add and subtract step. Here again you have whichever method you like best, either left to right strictly, or grouping good guys and bad guys. I'm going to go left to right on this one. I have a 4 minus 18, so 4 good guys, 18 bad guys. That means I'm going to have a negative 14, or 14 bad guys left with my plus 7. If I have 14 bad guys and 7 good guys, those 7 good guys are going to take out 7 of those 14 bad guys, leaving me with 7 bad guys or negative 7. Again, I suggest that you use your calculator to check your work. So when you type in the original problem, make sure you type everything in as it's shown, and you double check and just to ensure that we're accurately doing this correctly. All right. Example 2. Okay. If we look for our exponents, we'll notice that there are 2 cases. We've got a 3 squared here and a 5 squared here. So I'm going to write down my negative 2, which is going to be multiplied to my answer here for 3 squared. My 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. I have plus 7 minus negative 8 plus 5 squared is 5 times 5, and that's 25. So now I'm done calculating my exponents. Now I'm looking at my next step in the order of operations, which is multiplication and division. Well, here again, it looks like there's only one case of multiplication and no cases of division. So I'm going to make my triangle to help me remember. I have got a negative number times a positive number. So negative 2 times 9 is going to give me a negative 18. Now I'm going to write out the rest of my problem. Oops. Okay, so now I'm on my add and subtract step. In my add and subtract step, I like to look for any subtracting or subtracting a negative, which I do have. So here I'm going to make that to add the opposite or plus a positive. And in this one, I'm going to count all my positives, group them together, count all my negatives, and group them together also. So it looks like I have 18 bad guys or 18 negatives. And I have 7 positives, 8 positives, and 25 positives. So if I look at all my positives or my good guys, I have 7 plus 8, which gives me 15. And I'm adding on another 25. So 15 plus 25 is 10, carry the 1, 40. So I have 40 good guys, and I have 18 bad guys. So if I do 40 minus 18, I'm going to get an answer of 22 good guys, or positive 22. Okay? One more example. So there's nothing to do inside of our parentheses. So we're going to start with our exponents. One part where there's an exponent. So I have to write down the rest of my problem, negative 27 divided by 9 minus, if I type in negative 3 in parentheses, squared on my calculator, or if I think in my head, negative 3 times negative 3, that's going to be a positive 9. And in this case, there's nothing multiplied to what's in my power. Okay, here's my power. There's a minus sign before it, so I'm just subtracting 9 in this case. And then I have my minus 4 times negative 5. Okay, so we did our exponent. Now we're in the multiply and divide step. So if I look through here, I've got, if I start at the beginning, at the left side, I got division, subtraction, subtraction, multiplication. So negative 27 divided by 9. If I look up at my triangle above, the negative divided by positive is going to be negative, in this case negative 3. I'm going to write down my minus, my 9, and my minus. And then I'm multiplying a positive 4 and a negative 5. A positive times a negative is negative, and in this case 4 times 5 is 20. Okay. Now I've completed my multiplication and division step. I'm just going to add and subtract from left to right, or by grouping my good guys and bad guys. However, I notice I have a minus and a negative, so I'm going to change that to add the opposite. Okay, I'm going to go left to right on this one. Negative 3 minus 9 means I have 3 bad guys and 9 more bad guys. So I'm adding more bad guys, which means I have 12 bad guys. And I'm adding on a positive 20. So if I have 12 bad guys and 20 good guys, 12 of those bad guys are going to take out 12 of my good guys, which means I'm going to have 8 good guys left, or an answer of positive 8. All right, so again, use your calculator, type it in correctly just as it's seen. If you're not sure, you can always ask me in class to make sure that you're typing things in correctly. I want you now to try these examples on your own. So please pause the video, and when you're finished, we will start it up again and look at the answers. Okay, number 1, kind of tricky. I now have something to the third power. On all the other examples, I think I did second power only. But we have a number to the third power. Right here, we have a positive 2 to the third power. So I'm going to write down everything else. I have a negative 1 plus negative 5. My 2 to the third power is 2 times 2 times 2. Type that into your calculator as 2 to the third, you should get 8. Now if I notice, again, my negative 5 is multiplied to that because there's no sign in between there. So I'm going to do times 8. And then at the end, I've got this minus negative 7. Okay, so our exponents are finished. Now we're going to do our multiplication and division from left to right, whichever comes first. It looks like I only have this one multiplication part. So I've got a negative 1 plus, now my multiplication is negative 5 times 8. So if I have a negative 5 times a positive 8, my answer is going to be negative. And in this case, it's going to be negative 40. And then I'm going to write down my minus negative 7. So now I'm in my adding and subtracting step. I notice again that I have a minus and a negative, so I'm going to make that add the opposite. I have, and this time I'm going to group them into good guys and bad guys, or positives and negatives. I have 1 negative and 40 more negatives, and I have 7 positives. So if I put all my bad guys or my negatives together, I have 1 bad guy and 40 more bad guys. So I have 41 bad guys and 7 good guys. All right, so if you need to use your calculator for this, that's fine. My only concern with you using your calculator is that you don't show your steps sometimes. However, I know that you're going to do a great job of going through this step by step and showing your work. So using a calculator is not a big deal as long as we are still showing our process. So 41 bad guys and 7 good guys means we're going to get rid of some of our good guys are going to get rid of some of our bad guys. So we're going to end up with negative 34 as our final answer. Okay. I'm going to scroll this down a little bit here just to give us some room to work again. I'll bring my division sign with me here. Okay. And we'll look at example 2. All right, so here we go. Example number 2. We've got 1 exponent. Okay, and what's being squared here? There's nothing in parentheses. So that means the square, the exponent of 2 is on what's right before it. And the part that's right before it is the 3. Okay, so the minus sign in this case is going to be utilized in our add and subtract step. We're not going to touch that minus sign yet. So I'm going to write down everything until I get to that power. And 3 squared, we know, is 9. Okay, so I'm done with my exponents. Now I'm in my multiply and divide step. So it looks like I have, if I go left to right, I have this multiplication. I have that division. So if I look up at my triangle above, I have a negative times a positive. That's going to give me a negative. 2 times 4 is 8. I'm going to bring down this subtraction sign. Now I have a positive 28 divided by a positive 7. We can't use a triangle, but it's positive divided by positive. So that means our answer is going to be a positive 4. All right. And then lastly, we have the minus 9. That's not involved yet. Okay. So now I'm in my add and subtract step, and it looks like I have all minuses or all negatives or all bad guys. Okay, 8 bad guys and 4 more bad guys and 9 more bad guys. It's a lot of bad guys. Okay. Negative 8 and negative 4, or 8 bad guys and 4 bad guys, gives me 12 bad guys. Then I put 9 more bad guys with that. Gives me 21 bad guys, or an answer of negative 21. Third and final example. Okay, this is a long one, and again, you can look at this and get very overwhelmed, or you could say I'm just going to follow my order of operations and do 1 step at a time, and it's going to be workable, especially if you can use your calculator to help you out. I encourage that, but just make sure you're showing your steps again. All right, so we're starting with exponents. The only exponent I have is negative 4 to the 3rd power. So I'm going to write down what else is here that I'm not going to work with yet. Okay, so I wrote down the original, or the first part of the original problem as it's shown, and then I get to negative 4 to the 3rd power. So you put negative 4 in parentheses to the power of 3, and you should get a negative 64. And now I'm going to write down the rest of that problem. So we did the exponent step. Check that off. Let's move to the multiplication and division step. All right, we have this division and multiplication combo here. I'm only going to do this first step, okay, and then I'll eliminate the first piece of that multiplication and division step. Simplify it a little bit. So I have a positive divided by a negative. So I know that's going to give me a negative answer, so that's a negative 6. I'm just going to write down the rest of this. Some of these can get long, but if you want to get it right, it makes sense just to do a little bit at a time. Okay, so I know it might be a lot of writing for some of you, but it's better to do it and do it correctly than to make a mistake by trying to rush or do too much at once. All right, so I still have some multiplication left. I did that first division part. Now it looks like I can multiply -6 and -1, and this 3 and -2. So -6 times -1, I have a negative times a negative. That's going to give me a +6. And then I have my plus -64 plus. Now I have a +3 times a -2. Yikes. So I have a +3 times a -2. That's going to be a -6 in this case. All right, now when I look at this, I actually notice that I have a 6 and a -6. I have a +6, 6 good guys, and I have a -6, 6 bad guys. What happens when you have the same amount of good guys and bad guys? They cancel each other out. So those bad guys take out those good guys. So all we're left with here is a -64 as our final answer. Okay? Again, feel free to check your answers with a calculator if you need to. Okay, hopefully you did these all correctly. Just to go over the answers one more time. -34, -21, and -64. If you have any questions, we can go through them in class. Thank you for watching.